My partner watched this great Joe Lycett show about him entering the summer exhibition, and she said, why don't you enter it with one of these things that you're making? But I had loads going on. I was building Smash Bash and Guilliman. I had all these other projects going on, so I sort of forgot about it. In August, I saw that my friend Gareth, who makes models online with the name That Beyond the Light, was planning to enter the summer exhibition, and my brain suddenly went, oh, actually, I'm short of projects this winter. It's much easier to build things if you've got somebody else that's helping you. So I thought, why not? Let's chat to him and see if that sparks some ideas, imagination to make it happen and to get into it.
My name's Gareth. Most people probably know me as That Beyond the Light. I'm a grim dark artist. I make boxes filled with grim dark scenery, dioramas, art, style stuff. I've made a few miniatures and bits like that. That's how I kind of started though, before moving into boxes. And I have done a couple of collab miniatures, which is quite good fun. I do a bit of everything, but mainly my bag is filling boxes with things. I've entered art competitions before for some of my boxes with local competitions. One of them, we live by the sea, like a sea scene, did like a trio of boxes, and they were basically kind of resin based with water effect. So I've entered competitions before. This was a bit of a biggie really. So we were watching Joe Lycett on a documentary about the Royal Academy Arts summer show. He entered it and got through the actual exhibition. He went back basically one year, have a look at other entrants and their work and who they are, and I thought it was just commissioned artists or artists who have been invited to take part. I didn't realise that it was a completely open art competition, and basically my intrigue was set straight off then. So watching the programme, and there were all sorts of weird stuff going into it.
So what is the summer exhibition? The summer exhibition is the longest continuous open art competition. So it started in 1769 and it is held at the Royal Academy of Art in London.
So I did a bit more research into it. Couldn't really find out much about kind of when you enter and find out themes. I've been talking to Lawrence long before. I was just curiosity because of his style of work, kind of person he is and his love of art. Approached him and said, do you know anything about the summer show? Funny enough, said that he thought about entering it himself. Thought, let's do it. Let's see if we can bring the community, our hobby community, into a fine art, contemporary art scene. Enter it together, but obviously separate pieces. Bounced ideas off each other and talked about different aspects of it. So worked together on it, which was really cool. See, we did our live videos about our progress. Been a little bit of a collaboration in the end, which has been really cool.
Anyone can, as long as you have £38, can enter it. Each year there is a theme, a different set of curators or a special guest as a curator. It's a free exhibition, so anyone can go to it. I've always tried to make the most of living in London by going to exhibitions, and free exhibitions are always the absolute best. Sketching out ideas, talking to Gareth about what we could potentially do.
I did some digging to find out what entry dates were and when we found out about the theme, and that was probably quite a stressful bit, because to build a box, especially this big, obviously it takes a bit of time and quite a bit of planning, from initial sketches to building little bits and pieces to kind of see if they work. But I just couldn't find anything about the theme, and that was the big thing, because I was like, well, if I want to build something, I want to try and build something to the theme to give me the best chance of getting through, and just couldn't find anything. Found out the date that you have to enter it by, which was February time. So we were getting to early October, and I was like, still don't know anything about this theme, and I was thinking, I'm not going to be able to build anything in this time. I reached out to an artist who had got through. He'd actually talked about it and said it's by early November that you find out the entry dates. I thought, well, I can't wait that long. So I just started sketching out ideas that I thought adapt to the theme once it came out. And I decided that I think of something to do with time. If you've seen some of my other work, you'll see that I do quite a bit of stuff with clocks and mirrors and sort of passage of time and the inner workings of it. So I'm going to stick to my guns and I'm going to go with something to do with time. I knew I wanted a working clock in it. I knew I wanted that to be the kind of centerpiece, so I put that right at the top. And I sort of drew this out, a very rough sketch. I thought that I wanted to kind of play on the themes that are current at the moment. There's big corporations holding us all to ransom and causing us to kind of do things we probably don't want to do, and that's contributing to our demise as such, and we're kind of powerless to stop it. That's why I came up with the idea of the hierarchy, then beat down workers, and then a pit full of waste, basically. I sketched it out in a few sketches, and then kind of started thinking about the box. And actually finding the box was probably the hardest bit. I wanted a super antique looking box, and I found some writing boxes, and I liked the fact that it's like a slant. I could get like the floors coming out of the slant, so like jutting out a bit, so then when it closed, it still closed, but when you opened it, they were floor texture. But if I'm being honest, they were far too expensive. I don't know why I thought they'd be cheaper, and there were far and few between. I really couldn't find any. I started building the floors while looking for the box, so I kind of knew the dimensions that I wanted for it. I had to go on the end generic box, but it's worked out quite well because it's quite easy to alter, and do the work on the inside was a little bit easier. Once I got the box, obviously I knew the dimensions a lot better, and I could start kind of filling and like fleshing out areas a lot better. In the beginning, I didn't want to go grimdark. I wanted it to be kind of like an actual art piece as such, and every time I tried to do that, it all fell back into like this grimdark style. I just decided at one point, why fight it? Why not use my strengths and build upon those, and basically try and build something that exceeds my abilities, but exceeds my general build style, but still keeping it grim. And that's what I went with. Basically play to strengths, build to the best of my abilities. And if I'm being honest, I kind of went a bit above my abilities, and there were a couple of bits that kind of went wrong and I had to start again with. But yeah, in the end, it was a good play. So yeah, that's what I kind of decided that would be best.
I like to find objects that are interesting sizes and shapes and then use them as a base to build dioramas around, like this lovely tower made of an umbrella stand. I was also looking at making things with the absolute bare minimum amount of money spent. I'm looking around my flat and realised that we've got these panel heaters that had broken last winter. We're going to have to replace them. They're about 5 foot across. They would make a perfect base for something. And as we sort of started to go into winter, we had a really nasty cold snap. A lot of old fears that I'd thought I didn't ever have to think about or worry about ever again kind of started bubbling up to the surface. Electricity bills are obviously completely insane. Heating with panel heaters is an incredibly inefficient and expensive way of heating anyway. I was leaving the heaters off as much as possible, but then that was increasing the level of condensation in the windows. Because there's condensation in the windows, black mold starts to grow. Having lived in places with black mold multiple times before, the way to clean it off is bleach. While you're spraying the bleach, you need the windows open, otherwise you're breathing in the bleach. That mixture of worry about mold, worry about ingesting mold, worrying about eating bleach, worrying about heating. Suddenly, that's when you've got heat to spare, cold is an absolute joy. When you don't, and you're concerned about it and you're worried about it, it becomes a fight. I wanted to make something that felt like it was old fears that have come back to haunt us. And I wanted to have an explosion of mold and texture and creatures from folklore and the past. Get out my beloved expanding sealant foam to make some of the stuff, make some weird things. Lots and lots of plant life. Bought some lichen and some sea moss off of Etsy. I really like using it. It's a little bit crumbly and the texture is quite weird, but I just think it adds a really nice flavour to everything. For the floating tower, I bought loads of plant life and 3D prints from Epic Basing. I didn't want to spend so much money. I thought I'm going to use these a lot. I spend a bit on the STLs, and then my friend Mike, Grumpy Kiltpin, very kindly printed me off an absolute ton of different sizes of these files, so that I have all this like variety and texture, and really help with some of the like chaotic feel of it.
So overall, it was quite a tough exhibition to enter for me. All the way through, all I wanted to achieve is get through to the second stage. So your first stage is you submit photos of your piece, and then they review that. If they like what they see, they ask you to bring the piece in, and then if they really like what they see, then it goes through to the exhibition. All I've wanted to do throughout the whole thing is just get through the photo bit. So if I get to the bit where I have to take it to London and they have a look at it, etc., that'll be the biggest achievement for me. Just to get it visually looked at by a panel of prestigious artists. If I get through to the next exhibition, which I'll be honest, I don't think I will, that's just icing on the cake. That would be absolutely amazing. And because of that, I've put myself on the line with it a little bit, just in kind of like theme, trying to think of something that's current. And This year's theme was only connect. Happily, the time thing and whole thing about like hierarchy, like commanding, influencing the people below who then kind of just mundanely live on type thing kind of fits, to be honest. Time connects us all. Without time, then there is no connection as such. At least an hour to 2 hours, and it was pretty much 2 hours every night for nearly 3 months to work on it. And then on days where either my family was out and I was on my own, I'd do at least another 2 or 3 hours on top of that. So I've put in a lot of effort. I'll be honest, I don't work quickly, quite a slow worker, and I'm all right with that. But come things with deadlines, because of how slow I am, I like to have as much prep as possible before it. If I don't like something, I don't just kind of carry on with it. I'll kind of scrap it and do it again. So yeah, it's probably best when you're kind of working on deadlines like this. But yeah, I literally put everything into this. Am I happy that with that? It was an experience. I think because of it being the first one that we'd entered, I think there's probably a lot of it was unnecessary. And I think next time round, which I will do the next one, I'll know how things work. I know the easier ways of like doing it, and there won't be so much stress with the whole theme thing of it. And to be honest, I could probably start it July time easily and just tinker with it along the way, all the way up to the point of the theme, and then apply the theme to it. And once I'd submitted the work, I literally had a whole week off where I just couldn't look at hobby stuff. I'll be honest, it's kind of like hard me a little bit after that, and I've I'm not doing as much hobby as I was, and when I am, it's kind of little bits and bobs rather than like trying to crack on with big parts. It was an experience, quite a hard experience, and I've definitely learned a lot from it, and I mean a lot, and hopefully I can apply that to my work going forward. And the good part of the experience was actually, like I said in the beginning, is working with Lawrence. That's been brilliant, and like doing the live videos and stuff like that. That was really good.
I really like Folkhammer is making 28 themed models with a kind of like folk horror feel to it. Looking at Anna's work from Gardens of Hecate, I'd sort of missed the boat on the first Kickstarter. I messaged Andrew May Meridian Miniatures and he had some spare boxes, so he managed to sort me out with that, and they're absolutely beautiful sculpts, and I know that part 2 is coming out quite soon, so I recommend going and have a look at that. I had quite a few leftover bits. Corvus Cabal kit, Blood Bowl, Athlorn Avengers. I really like the bodies and the figures on these things. I think they've got really nice musculature and hands, and I think there's an interesting feel with them. I really like kit bashing things out of them. Because I bought these kits specifically for kit bashing, I had lots of pieces left over, so that was great. I also used a lot of costume jewellery as well. And last but not least, one of the models that I've always wanted to use, and I hadn't quite found a use for it because there's so many amazing kit bashers out there, which is the Skinari Katala, which I pretty much just use as is because, oh my god, it's such a beautiful, beautiful sculpt. I love using the Lumineth. I think they're amazing sculpts in general, and this brings me to almost using all of their characters to make different things, but not quite. still got some go for different kit bashes. Getting it off the actual wall wasn't too difficult. It did pull quite a few big chunks out, but that's fine. I'm going to put it back up there to take pictures of because I hadn't read through the criteria yet properly of how to submit photos, which basically said you had to do it against a plain background and not in situ. I really wanted part of the feel of it to be that it was on the wall and like poking out of it. Took it off the wall, got my table set up, got the camera set up so that I can film it. I start poking around with it with some scissors. It is way, way, way too hard to cut with that stuff. Rather than immediately going and getting some actual tools, I just tried to use what was to hand. I managed to puncture a hole in it with a screw and a hammer. And then I got some scissors in there, jammed the scissors in as hard as I could, and snapped off the point on nice kitchen scissors, which was annoying. Then used a hammer to ratchet a bit out and some wire cutters to cut a little bit out. Didn't really work. The edges were very sharp, and I realised that I was going to absolutely wreck myself any minute now. So I was just going to shear part of my hands off with the split metal. So I got some gardening gloves, I got these shears, and actually the sheer strength of them just worked a treat. So then I cut the centre part open. It wasn't quite as broad as I thought, but actually I quite like the effect. I used the pliers to try and like roll it around so it looked like it was erupting as well. Now, looking at this, I felt that maybe it was a little bit flat, and I was concerned that when I put the expanding sealant foam in that it wouldn't bubble out enough, and so that I would need some sort of frame. I was kind of hoping that internally there would be a bit more stuff rather than this single heating element, and that maybe I could smash that up and use that to make some internal bits that are coming out, but there wasn't really anything there. I had this huge amount of copper piping left over from making this floating model that I just needed one small bit of pipe, but ordered this huge roll, and it's been really annoying and in the way the entire time, and thought I'd use that. I worked out how to put it in. It was nice having some coils like internally so it looks like it's part of the structure that's coming out. I thought it might look a bit like a rib cage once all the organic fleshy textures are in. I then started to use expanding sealant foam. You're not meant to breathe this stuff in. I'd use a mask on while I'm doing it. Opened all the windows, absolutely Baltically freezing in my flat, which I didn't really think about, and then didn't shake it up enough, and then emptied the whole can. And you really need to do it in one go because that stuff doesn't. As soon as there's oxygen in it, it starts to solidify very quickly. It didn't really expand that much. I kept coming back to it, didn't expand. I kept coming back, I came back to it again, didn't really expand. But what it did do is start to bubble just a tiny bit, and the effect that I wanted to go for was this honeycomb texture you get from puncturing it. Now, you only really get the part of honeycomb texture if it has expanded enough. This didn't quite expand enough, but it did still expand. So I punctured this with a pencil, pen and stuff like that, and drew it across the different areas to make it look like it was erupting out and slowly growing around different sections of the model, which is really fun. It's a really fun technique to do. It creates this lovely sound. Some people think it looks disgusting. I think it looks lovely. It's just there's something doughy about it. It's a real joy to use. I structured this around the whole model. While I was doing this, I was also adding in sections of the sea moss and the lichen so that it would solidify and grow over it so that it was seamless. I did think about maybe putting some of the 3D printed plants into it at the time so that it would nicely attach. I did that with a couple of parts, but I was also freezing and wanted to get a sense of the shape of it and how the overall thing looked before I went that far. The great thing about all of this was that then there's so much done in one go. This took a couple of hours. It really didn't take a huge amount of time. I left foam to cure overnight in the lounge, my bedroom workshop, because I don't want to die from fumes, and then that went really well. Started making some individual creatures. Really wanted to capture a kind of medieval illustration, maybe Hieronymus Bosch kind of look to it. So some of my favourites are these legs stuck together. So there's legs and legs, and I call them legs. These little creatures with skulls for the heads, the bears themselves, this weird leggy chain snake, which I'm really happy with the way that it curves round. It's got the legs attached to it. It was very simple to make and just looks odd and a bit disgusting. I had this idea that maybe I'd build it as a kind of totem and have all of them around a circular ring, and then each different part of it coming off so that it would create one like tableau. But I tried that. It was looking really interesting. I quite like the look of it. But then when I actually tried to fit it into the model, it was too regular for the shape of the model. Didn't match up to it at all. And even if I thought if I expand this much more, what it's going to do is hide all of the textures and the cavity inside, which looks really nice, obliterate that work. So instead, what I wanted to do is have this central figure, a figure to one side, as if there's a cascade of plant life coming out, and then a cascade of creatures coming out as well. So it's all coming from this singular point of orifice inside and kind of spilling out. I think it works. Created all of these creatures. I'd previewed some of them, and the Void Winds had made me these excellent creatures to go with it, which I think really suited it. I used the animals I'd got from Veronica as well. Lots of random bits and pieces, and then I started to position them on the model. It's an interesting process because I had this idea in my mind how it would look, but the pieces really informed where anything could fit, and I built it front to back. This is like the worst, absolute worst way of building something like this, which I always end up doing is getting the background details, the things that I need to do first. I love this little pig rider. I feel like a huge amount of affection for him as well. Making things in miniature, I love being able to put little tiny details hidden away in corners or in different sections, so that especially when you've got this much scale and scope, you can always add another little secret area. I love those illustrations where you've got thousands and thousands, these huge incredibly detailed structures and things, and you're always looking for this extra bit. I really like making something like that. I think it looks cool. Once all the characters were positioned on it, I had to add in all the rest of the plant life. Now, I was looking at things like The Last of Us and Annihilation, and the way that they portray these expanding foam and monsters and creatures, and I've never quite captured it. And there's a very particular image from Annihilation that I love, and I was looking at that and just thinking, you have these concentric rings, and you've basically got parts of the plant life that grow out, and then you've got a miniature explosion of plants and things like that. So that's probably the way to do it. So I chose the lumps that I put around of sealant foam that I put around, and then built out from those, so that each one is this kind of miniature island, this little island of plant life and matter and growth. I wanted to keep the creatures fairly centrally, so that there'd be a single point of visual impact in the center, so that you'd have this very lush cascade, and then you have small points all around the model of interest. It's a very weird mix of wanting to do lots of detail, but then also not too much detail, so that overwhelms everything. So to have a bit of a mixture of both those things. Once I'd layered all the models up so that they looked like there was enough of a flood, it was great fun dotting all the bits of plant life around. I wanted to make sure that each model had as much plant life on it as possible without completely overwhelming the actual model itself, because I wanted to make sure that there was to look like there's no breakdown between the creatures and the plant life, that the two things were the same. And I think kind of got that, especially with the little bear thing in the front with this proboscis coming out. I really liked it. It was really fun to build. I used a lot of old Empire models that were really bad condition. They'd been snapped off the bases, they're missing feet, they're missing arms. I'd used the heads a lot for other kits, so it was kind of nice putting those together. Veronica very kindly sent me some faces that I used to make this odd kit bash that I wasn't hugely in love with, but I was in love with the head figure, and so I felt that this would be quite a good model to have looming in the background over everything. I wanted to have lots of organic textures as well, so there's lots of kind of wiggly arms and like strange creatures with lots of multiple limbs and multiple heads and multiple faces. I want to create a feeling that you want to just get into the model and keep looking through and spotting kind of interesting things. Once we're finished, it kind of looks like a mess. I think a few people just said, "Oh, it just looks like a massive mess." Yeah, that is the idea. That is very much the idea. And And having done all that and created the textures and made all the things look nice, in my head I'm building in a sort of negative, because I'm trying to imagine what it's going to look like once you base coat all of it. It will start to look like one texture rather than lots and lots of different textures and lots of materials. So it's trying to work out what it's going to look like once you get the base coat on.
I work very modular, so all the floors come out. If it does go through to the next round, they will be glued in, so then they can't come out. They can't come out anyway, they're really tightly in. The clock comes out, so there's a big hole in here, and that doesn't get splattered in paint. Because of that, I could easily kind of get into a lot of the detail. So a lot of my projects are all modular, so because of the amount of little details, it's just easier to get into with a paintbrush and obviously paint those bits. If I know it's there, it has to be painted, and it has to be painted how it should be. Underneath all the floors, probably won't see most of it, but it's all pipe work and bits and bobs and like bits that work on the pipes. And because of that, I had to pull them out. I had to make it modular so I could paint them properly. And there's like bits in the bottom. So at the back, there's loads of detail at the back. There's like bodies and parts of clocks and some pools of water. And obviously if all the floors are in, there's no way that you could properly get in and paint them properly at the back. So yeah, that's why I kind of work modular with all of my work. Just so you can get those little details. I know it's there, and if someone saw it and it wasn't painted or wasn't painted properly, to me that just like break me. And yeah, because of that, it's just made it, like I said, a bit easier to kind of get into little bits and pieces. Painting the guys, that was probably the biggest part for me. They had to be detailed. The rest of it was washes and a bit more ambiguous, I suppose, on what they're supposed to be. The guys at the top, they had to be painted properly, and they were probably the biggest challenge. I'm awful at painting faces, and I'm not a big fan of painting faces because I'm awful at it. I know for practice I'd probably get alright at it, but I'm not the best. But I'm pretty happy with how they turned out for my standard. They're fairly detailed, I think they show a bit of expression, they kind of work. And hopefully the old man looks like an old man with kind of paled down his skin a bit, so it's a bit greyer. Then the younger guy kind of tried to make a bit more fresher kind of look to him, and then the guy in the green suit, I just kind of like darkened down his skin a bit, kind of made like a middle-aged kind of chap, bald head, and quite had fun trying to make like a stippled shaved head look. That was quite fun. The pile of rubbish and stuff like that, it's kind of my bag anyway, so I learned a couple of new techniques with some pigment powders and stuff. So yeah, I used some new paints that I haven't used before, like the rust effects and stuff, and that's how I kind of achieved this dusty, dirty, powdery look to it. Used some UV resin. I use UV resin for small pools of water. You can leave it to settle a little bit longer before it actually kind of wants to set, levels it out, and also brings some of the bubbles to the surface as well a bit more. In tighter areas and stuff like that, it's just a little bit easier to use. When you've got like a droplet bottle full of it. I use UV resin on small projects, and then on larger projects like the sea scenes that I did for the local competition, that was actual proper resin, clear resin, just because it was so fast. There's quite a lot of it to go in. Actually, really proud of it. That bottom section is awesome. And the middle section, that was basically the idea behind that was that none of them have got faces. I wanted them to kind of stand out from the darkness in the background and the grime that's in there, but I wanted them to be kind of plain, nondescript. So I went with like a bonish kind of colour with like grey washes over it, grey and brown washes, kind of just fill in the recesses. So then some of the details stood out a bit more. You know, they're just part of a crowd. They don't really mean anything or anything like that as such. Obviously they mean something to the story, but as kind of like characters in it, they're just doing what they're doing, which is basically throwing hot parts into the bottom and wasting them. So yeah, that was the painting.
So I carried it downstairs, which was a nightmare, and then out to the car park and rested it on the bike racks, which was almost perfect, as if it had been built for it. And I started to spray with black spray paint, and as I started to spray, I really love the effect in the middle. I really like how it looks, and I'm not so keen on the leftover white of the frame. I'm really torn at this point, because I think if I paint it all black, is it going to be obvious that it's really meant to be a panel heater with this stuff coming out of it? That's the plan. That's what it's meant to look like. It's not just meant to be that this is a base and then that is the kind of stuff that's coming out of it. So as I'm spraying it, I'm thinking, well, I'm not gonna take this downstairs and respray it once I've done it. I could strip it if I think the effect hasn't worked. And so I just went over the whole thing and painted and did it all in black. So it's difficult to know because the amount of white on it might have obliterated the like hot points of highlight on the plant life and detracted images, like maybe washed that out because it would be the brightest colour, or the absence of colour. So I don't know, two minds about it. Let me know what you think. I'm sure everyone's got an opinion. At this point, it's brilliant. I mean, it looks so grotesque. It looks a lot like somebody described it as looking like the table from The Thing when he said that I was probably really bad at cooking barbecues, which I'm not. I then used a Wraithbone highlight to highlight the areas where I was going to paint much brighter colours. I was tempted to leave it at this point because it looks so nice, but I like painting, so I'm going to paint it. The first thing I painted on this was the copper pipe, and I painted it with copper Folkhorror paint, and there is something about painting a material to look like it originally looked before you covered it over that is just every hobbyist journey, and it's so much fun. Well, is it fun? I don't know. It's just a rite of passage, and I felt very silly doing it, but it really helped me once I got that done to get something done and get me over the hump of spending time thinking about painting it rather than actually just getting on it and painting it. It's really difficult when you're making projects that you've never made before, you don't know what you're doing, and you've got, like, the plan for them is learn how to do it as you're doing it, because where do you start? And getting started often is part of the struggle of it. I was looking at lots of colour references from moulds and fungi to try and really nail the luminosity and the bright colour of them. I think I did an okay job. I started off very tentatively doing small sections, and actually the brightness of it against the black and white background already created like such a vivid feeling immediately. I was almost tempted just to do a tiny bit, and then I thought I'll just keep going. It's going to work. It's going to look better. So I was looking at references for plants and seeing like how super saturated they are. I haven't really painted much green in the past. I went through a lot of Steve Rowlinson's work to get variations of how to do it, and then also looking at the kind of greens he did. There's a lot of blue in there. There's a lot of yellow, and trying to kind of mix those colours so that they all work well. I think this is the most successful oil painting that I've done, and I really enjoyed mixing the oil paints and trying to mix different colours. So I'm adding. I probably only got about a week to go at this point, so it feels a little bit tight and a little bit stressful. I keep getting notifications from the Royal Academy being like, make sure you have given this in. We nearly hit our deadline, blah, blah, blah. And then I think 4 days before I check, because suddenly I think, oh, have I made a mistake? Is there something that I haven't done here? And I go on their website and it says sold out. And I think, I've just spent 4 months thinking and sourcing bits and making this thing. It's enormous. What an absolute fucking waste of my time. I was so cross with myself for not checking and not reading over it. I couldn't remember that this was anywhere. And then I just thought, relax a bit, take some deep breaths. Don't stress out about it too much. If you've messed it up completely, then, who cares? It doesn't matter. Use it for something else. I signed into it. I thought, I'll just see if I can just pay the subscription, the fee. And because I signed in and registered, it counts as already being like part of it. So if you want to enter this competition, and it's good, I do enjoy it, as soon as registration is open, sign up for it and just pay. Just get your payment in so it's done. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. Just avoid that stress for yourself.
Submitting the piece, that's probably the biggest challenge. Mentally, more than anything, what they ask you for once you go to submit. And it was tight when I submitted it. I submitted it a week before the deadline. Lawrence submitted it pretty much on the deadline. Fair play to him. Basically, you had to take photos from different angles and then submit those photos. And all you're allowed to submit are 3 photos. And submitting 3 photos is difficult, especially with a piece like this, because there's so much detail and so much going on and so many little pieces that you have to look inside in order to see, which kind of, a crucial story as well, isn't it? Then yeah, it's hard work. I took, and I'm not even joking about this, I took about 150 to 170 photos, something crazy like that, and I kept taking photos, different light ways of lighting it, different angles, different everything to try and get the perfect photos. And then photos down to, I think it was about 30, and then I kind of edited those 30 photos, and then I whittled those down to about 10 or 12, I think it was. Couldn't kind of like come to what would look best for it. And like I said, it's really difficult. You know, what's going to best show the kind of what you're trying to achieve with it. I picked 3, and there's a reason I picked these certain 3. So I picked one which was obviously straight on, straight fronts, as you can see, you know, the whole piece. Did one from, I think it was the left side, sorry, looking down slightly into it. To give like a different angle. Then I did kind of like a close-up-ish shot of the bottom 2 to kind of show a bit more of the like waistline bit and the sort of the mass of people. And I picked those 3 because I wanted to, well, I had this kind of strategy with them. I wanted to kind of show the piece, obviously, to them and show them in full and what it looks like. But I also wanted to hold back showing them everything. So that's why there was only one kind of shot, so like semi-detailed shot, was to show them that it is detailed. There is lots more going on than what you can see in just a face-on photo, and that, you know, maybe they should get it in to have a closer look at it. And that was the kind of thinking behind it. I'm going to admit there was a bit of a strategy to it, definitely. Maybe it'll pay off, maybe it won't. I'm unsure, but hopefully it does, and hopefully they'll want to take it through. But that was by far, I'm not even joking, the most stressful bit was just picking those 3 photos. The other really weird bit of the submitting was it asked about whether you wanted to sell your piece. Obviously I thought, yeah, might as well sell it. You know, if someone wants it, then I'm happy to part with it. And it asked how much you're willing to sell it for. And I had a bit of a joke with Lawrence about it, about like whack on a few thousand, stuff like that. But we both actually found it really difficult to kind of figure out how much do you price a piece of art for? I've never sold a piece of art, and I'm unsure about how it works. So Lawrence spoke to one of his artist friends who basically said that you should charge what you're willing to part with it for, because what you think it's worth, you letting it go for. Because I actually tried to work out how much I should charge for it if I kind of like, you know, use the amount of time I've spent on it, the materials used, except paints used, etc, etc. And I'm not joking, it'd be in its thousands if you worked it out like that. More so just for the time, the amount of time you spent on it. You know, if you think about 2-3 hours a day for 3 months, that's quite a lot. If you're charging yourself, you know, even minimum wage, it's going to be its thousands almost once you've factored in other bits and bobs. So I went for 500 quid, and there's a reason 500 quid, and it's not because I'm greedy or I think it's worth 500 quid. The RA take 30%, and I thought, well, if they're going to take 30%, just whack up a little bit, so then obviously that negates things. I just thought, well, if I get enough back for the materials used and a little bit extra, I'll be happy with that. But if I'm being honest, I'm not bothered about selling it. It doesn't bother me. If it doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. I'm not going to lose sleep. It's a piece that I've spent a long time on and I thoroughly enjoyed. So yeah, if it's if it comes back with me, it'll definitely find a place here. And yeah, I'm really proud of it.
Photography. Didn't want to do what I'd done on Smash Bash and super underexposed or overexposed the model. I think maybe I underexposed it a little bit. I don't know. Just I'm not good enough photographer for this stuff, for taking pictures of models at this scale. But my partner for Lens, Paul, really is good enough at this stuff, but unfortunately he wasn't free. So yeah, it's difficult sometimes taking pictures at the last minute. And it really was the absolute last minute, the day before the absolute deadline. So I got out my pretend velvet backdrop, put it on the floor, put the model on it, got on a chair, set up my camera, realised that to take this level of detail I needed to keep the camera as still as possible. Really, it should have been on a tripod, but in fact it's on a tripod balanced against my chest to try and get it as perfectly still as possible so you get all that detail in. And then these are the end result, these are the pictures that I submitted, which I think gives the visual impact that I wanted it to have and makes it work. It works really well for taking pictures of it internally because you've got all these like moody colours and things like this, but it looks so different in so many different lights. I tried quite a fluorescent light to begin with. It really like obliterates all the tones. I started to think maybe it's me, maybe in my mind I'm looking for the camera result rather than necessarily the model result. But then I thought visually it looks different to me when I'm looking at it. And then I thought, I don't understand how I perceive colours. I don't understand how anyone perceives colours. If you know, please hit me up and we'll have a chat about it because that'd be really cool. So I took these photos, I went through them, I chose the best 3 because that was the only ones you could take. I then went through the Royal Academy's website and selected all the options. Something I realised was that there were actually size limits for things. So fortunately, it just came under the maximum width that a sculpture could be. I put it through Sculpture. I wasn't quite sure if it was that or assemblage or whatever, but we'll see what happens. And then I entered and I pressed go, and I have to wait until March 22nd to find out if me or Gareth are through to the next round, where we have to take it to Central London, which is going to be fun, and then it's judged in person. So fingers and toes crossed for that. I think it'd be really fun if we could get in.
Art's always been a big part of my life, and throughout all of that, obviously I've been influenced by quite a few people. One person who continues to influence me in aesthetic, the drawings that I try to do, be Albrecht Dürer. And yeah, I mean, I've seen an exhibition of his work in Barcelona many years ago, and it's just phenomenal. That's that kind of thing. But to be honest, for this kind of work, then to be honest, it would have to be Nicky Grillet. She, when I first saw her work, it was an eye-opener to the whole hobby. Because of that, I realised it wasn't just plastic men, that the hobby could be more in kind of like an artistic sense, and there's just more to explore within it. And I remember doing my first box and I tried emulating Nicky's work as much as possible, get that aesthetic and get that look, and then I quickly realised after doing another one that wasn't the way to go, and that I had to go off and find my own style. And hopefully I have found my own style and something a little bit different that I do, kind of create things because I enjoy doing it. It's an outpour from my head for me, and yeah, I just fill that into boxes and then shut the lid. Maybe there's a metaphor there, maybe that's why I do it, maybe kind of trapping stuff in. Who knows, just overthinking that part. Lawrence's work is obviously quite a big influence, inspiration should I say. I mean, look at his Smash Bash piece from last year. I mean, that was just phenomenal. And it's the intricacy of the little bits and bobs that are going on within this massive structure. I think it's crazy. It's absolutely amazing. And you find those, as you look through it, you can see the little stories that are going on, and you pick up on little bits that you didn't see before. And I mean, he's just nailed that style and process so well. It's just incredible. Yeah, I can only see him getting on to bigger and bigger things. I mean, the 4-post bed, but we won't get into that. So yeah, what I would like to shout out about is a couple of people. Symptomatic Chaos. He's one guy that I chat to quite regularly, even though it's been a bit on and off at the moment due to some things going on with me. But yeah, I'd like to say thanks to him. He's been a source of help and friendship as well. That's been great, and that's awesome. I mean, there's Banhaus as well. I mean, he's just a great guy to chat to. He's such brilliant guy to kind of like get intricate kind of processes and stuff like that, and how in miniatures, and just have a chat to him in general. Settings to hit. I recently worked on his work is just incredible. The fact that he can just pick up like almost rubbish and put it together and create these awesome structures and characters. A good guy. And I'd say probably a bit of an influence, a bit jealous of his style. Just some of the people that help make this community awesome. Thanks, guys.
I hope you found that interesting. I can very highly recommend entering. We will make a bit more of a song and dance about building stuff next year, because I think the more miniature artists that can enter, the better. I love making videos about making big things and making things into different objects. The next big build I've got is Smash Bash, and tomorrow I'm going to go pick up this huge globe to start building it. Also going to finish off painting Gilliman in the next couple of days, so keep your eyes peeled for that, because it's going to be very exciting. If you would like to support me, please check out my Patreon. It is starting to grow. There's some really cool told people on the private Patreon Discord. Got a little bit burnt trying to do a giveaway because it was illegal, but but I'm trying to work out some sort of specific rewards for people who support me on there. It helps enormously. I just bought the globe with funds from that. If you want to help me build stuff, please do check it out. Hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you like this beautiful and bizarre model. And now I've just got to work out where I'm going to put it and what I'm going to do with it. Oh my god. Okay. Don't break it, don't break it, don't break it. Don't break it, don't break it, don't break it, don't break it. Don't break it. Okay, cool, didn't break it. Probably gives you a bit of sense of scale of it. It's always quite difficult to get a scale of miniature models, but it is fairly enormous, and it still does smell quite strongly, so, but I'm very proud of it, and I hope you enjoy seeing how I made it. Alright, cheers guys, thank you.